Hi there and welcome to Dialogue. On Thursday, China issued a white paper detailing its path to where it is today. Specifically, the document reviewed how it became a moderately prosperous society, or 小康社会. That is an ancient Chinese terminology describing a wealthy society with comfortable living standards for most of its citizens. Now, to dive into the details of this white paper and what it means for the people of China, I'm joined today by panelists with diverse backgrounds. Professor Fred Angist is from the University of International Business and Economics. Professor Zhang Chuanhong is with China Agricultural University. Michael Wang is head of FICC Overseas Sales and Trading with China Securities Corporation. And Flora Liu is founder of Joyview Education. Great to see all of you guys. This is our topic. I'm Wang Guan. Fred, let me start with you. Tell us your understanding of this concept and where China is, regarding 小康社会.
Well, that was a goal set up in the 80s. I think they more or less achieved that goal. Yeah, I mean, talking about the change, but it's a mixed bag, I would say, and that coming to see, I left China in 1974, and in that time, China was a agrarian society. I came back 2007 permanently, totally turned around, all right? And so that is a tremendous change. And but if you're using historical comparison, I see this change is very much comparable to what the U.S. experienced from 1860 to turn of century. U.S. took about 40 some years, changing from agrarian society into an industrial power. So China's just took about almost the same time. So what China achieved is pretty much a normal case for capitalist development in the West. But what is amazing now is that ever since World War II, we have not seen any other third world countries were able to achieve that same kind of development. And that's because of imperialism. I know some people don't like to hear that word, but that's the fact, okay? I mean, with the development of the imperialism, third world countries doesn't have a chance to rise up into so-called 小康社会, mainly because the Western powers will not allow you to compete with them, all right? But China has a unique condition that able to avoid that kind of fate where most third world countries are under, which is China since 70 years ago had a absolute sovereignty demonstrated in military, politics, and subsequently economics. So Chinese development is based on what China feels is right for them.
Michael, let me turn to you. You've read the white paper on building a 小康社会. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Well, I think this is a big step for China and also a big step for the world. Well, China's population is about 1/5 of the world total. And China's success in realizing moderate prosperity is a milestone in the history of global human rights. So our approach and experience has also provided a distinctive path to the world. So without China's poverty reduction and achievements, the international community would not be able to accomplish the MDG, which is the Millennium Development Goals in reducing the poverty reduction. So just like the former president of World Bank, Robert Zoellick said, there's no doubt that this is the biggest leap in the history of poverty eradication. Well, China's effort alone has greatly promoted to the achievement of MDG program related to the poverty reduction in the world. In 2015, the UN has also promoted a new vision, which is calling the eradication of extreme poverty globally by 2030, and we are already ahead of that for 10 years of the schedule.
Yeah, China did offer a lot, of course, but on other aspects, China still has a long way to go. Professor Zhang, let me pick your brain on this from your vantage point, your study areas, the many, many field trips you've taken all over China. How do you look at this concept of 小康社会 and where China is today?
I think the document clearly explained what Xiaokang society is and its relations with human rights development in China. And it clearly tells the world that Chinese people not only enjoy human rights, but we enjoy a more inclusive and comprehensive human rights. According to the concepts of Xiaokang, it means democracy, economic prosperity, cultural flourishment, social justice, and environmental improvement. So it is multidimensional. It's not just one dimension of democracy. So this is very important. And if you look at the life people enjoy in China today, it's a huge improvement.
Flora, how would you relate your own personal experiences living and working in China with what this white paper says about where Chinese are these days?
I would like to address the education equality mentioned in the white paper specifically. As an educational professional, I value education opportunities a lot. So if you observe the Chinese society, a great effort has been invested in improving school conditions and education quality for compulsory education in poor areas. Now, all primary and secondary schools in China have access to the internet, and the compulsory education completion rate in poor countries have reached 94%. So that's a huge achievement in terms of education.
For sure, education is a big deal. China pays a whole lot of attention to education. We'll get to them later. Professor Angus, you were born and raised in China, if I'm correct. And
yes.
Then you left for the United States in your early 20s. And then you moved back to China in 2007.
Right.
What changes impressed you the most?
Well, earlier I said that the big change from agrarian society to an industrial society, that's a huge change, all right? And also, like Professor Wang says, that China composed about 20% of humanity, which is a tremendous change. But I must say, I have a somewhat different take than others. I also witnessed incredible increase in inequality. The polarization in society is mind-boggling. Although the extreme poverty is eradicated, more or less, but just like in the US, I mean, in San Francisco, you got a whole lot of homeless people. And China has a lot of people invisible. I mean, China has become a very segregated society, segregated not by race, but by wealth, all right? So that's a fact of the Chinese life that very different from the days when I was in China during Mao's period. I mean, China is a poor country, but it's very egalitarian. And today, that's nowhere near, you cannot see that. So that's one striking thing that I see. And you can see one indication of that is the morning, the rush hour, the subway from the suburban of China, I mean, Beijing, rush into the city. And then their rush hour at night, it doesn't start until 9. People work long, long hours. Oh God, that is really something amazing. I mean, it's a mixed bag, okay? I mean, development is a mixed.
You're talking about inequality. Rural areas, were a major focus back then. People were divided into, urban people with urban household registration versus those living in the countryside. Professor Zhang, what did China do in the rural areas that impressed you over the years?
Similar to many developing countries, most poor people were concentrated in rural areas in China. People usually, just as Professor Angus said, usually associated rurality with backwardness. And due to the long-term rural-urban divide policies, people in rural areas, especially those in very remote areas, they couldn't enjoy the achievement of modernization. However, the poverty reduction strategy fundamentally changed the situation. If you look at the rural life in China now, due to the huge investment in infrastructure and relocation plan, all those people were lifted out of poverty. People don't need to worry about food, clothing, and have access to clean water, medical service, housing, and education. Many rural villages, they have libraries and they have their own medical clinics, they have their own nursery schools, and they also enjoy rich cultural life. And I think, now if you go to rural areas, you see for those people in remote areas, rurality is not a disadvantage, it's an advantage now. Ecotourism is becoming a fashion, it's becoming the major income for many rural areas. And I visited quite a few villages in China. They have parks. Many young people enjoy their life in pubs in the village. So that's quite amazing. And also rural people use live streaming to promote their village and to promote their products, special products, and their own cuisines. So that's really a big achievement, I think.
Yeah, Professor Zhang, what about gender equality? How has China fared in that regard over the years and decades?
Yeah, gender equality, it has also improved a lot. Now we always know, even the notion was spread to other countries, women hold half the sky. And in rural areas, used to have quite
Do Chinese women hold half the sky these days, do you think?
Yes, of course. Compared to many countries, even some developed countries, we can see women in China enjoy more rights. We can see no matter it's job opportunities or political rights, and also there's no discrimination, gender discrimination in rural areas now. Even for some areas, girls matter more than boys.
Right. Flora, what do you think? Do you think the international community, the Western societies in particular, understand the situation of Chinese women? What's their rights today?
I can speak from my personal experience as a young female and a CEO of a company. I feel like my rights have been well respected. Unfortunately, recently we heard about the sexual harassment incident happened in Alibaba. What surprised me was that the HR of Alibaba was unresponsive for quite a few days until this incident went viral in internet. But luckily, we can see that those days, if a woman's rights is violated, they're not afraid of slut shaming anymore. They are brave enough to stand up for their rights and advocate for their own right. So I think that's a huge improvement.
Fred, you agree on that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot more awareness in the last dozens of years or more. But in the 80s and 90s, the women's conditions are terrible. I mean, really. I mean, we have in my school, we have over 70% teacher are female, and yet in leadership position, most are staffed by men. And just the men get promotion, women don't in general. Just like there's a glass ceiling, I think it's worse than the Western countries. However, China actually, because the socialism in the Mao's period, that the women's participation is very high, always been very high. And that does really give women a lot speak. I mean, they in the family, in society, and yet it's a mixed bag. It's just like there's a lot of struggle. I mean, there's a lot of for a long time, and even today. I mean, powerful positions tend to hold by men, very few women. hold powerful positions.
All right, there are a lot of things to get to. Let's talk about education. Flora and Michael, both of you studied and lived abroad, but have returned to China. Michael, let me get to you. Many of our viewers may not know this, but in 2019, more than 80% of those studying overseas, those Chinese studying overseas, returned to China. Why do you personally make the decision of coming back to China?
Well, really, it's ask what you can do for your country. So I chose to came back because based on the trend of RMB globalization, the foreign institutions will have to do demand for the RMB asset. And I'm here to introduce how well functioned of China's capital markets. So for example, our equity market is the second largest in the world, which accounts for $10 trillion. And our fixed income market, which is also the second largest in the world, accounts for $16 trillion. And the foreign clients can open up Bond Connect or CFDM or other channels to invest in the high-speed investment opportunities in China and benefit from this.
Flora, what about you?
So for my father's generation, they went abroad to see a better world and to live a better life. But for my generation, we study abroad to see a bigger world, to experience diverse cultures and embrace new ideas. So right now, finding a job in other developed countries is not the best choice for Chinese students. Rather, it's just one of the many choices they could have. I chose to return to China and found Joy the Education because I want to contribute to educating and improving Chinese young generations. I hope to develop more compassionate, globally minded citizens who can connect China and the rest of the world. So that's how I pay back to the Chinese society.
Globally minded citizens. I love that concept. Michael, you're also a Chinese millennial. What are your personal reflections on China's system of government, which has been talked and debated and discussed a lot globally, a system that is very different from those of Western countries?
Well, as old Chinese saying goes, never forget why you started and your mission can be accomplished. So since the CPC inception, and CPC has determined to work for the Chinese people's happiness and well-being, pursue the rejuvenation of the nation, and promote the world peace. So under this great vision and the leadership, when the economic torch passed to the Chinese people, we made great industrial revolution, not only benefit our own people, but people worldwide shared by the One Belt, One Road initiative. So when China became the world factory and the world started to use cheaper and greater quality made in China products. So for the next era, China is going to be a high-tech, innovative driven country. And that is going to solve many current problems, such as inefficient production capacity in microchips. It's just like another example, like Tesla vehicles, right? If it wasn't China, Tesla EV cars would not achieve mass production in such a short period of time. So if the world embraces China's manufacturing capabilities, the world will sooner be a better place and achieve a shared future for mankind.
Yeah, let's talk about COVID. Its variant Delta is fast spreading from England to Indonesia, from Russia to Australia. It is a big problem. This white paper issued by the Chinese State Council also says about China's effort in preventing and controlling the COVID-19, saying that providing a safety net for its Chinese citizens is a form of protection of human rights. Fred, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, COVID is really a tough challenge for every country. It also laid bare you see, you have to balance that macro economic and people's health and livelihood and also stopping the spread. But right now I see that there is it's a catch-22. Like if you use all your effort trying to stop COVID, then other illness is being put in the back seat. I mean, just so many other illnesses not being treated. and the hospitals turning away patients. Not only in other countries, but in China, the same way. Just like you have to balance. Yeah, it's really tough.
Professor Zhang, let me go to you. Where is the balance between relaunching the economy and protecting people's safety with rigorous, sometimes stringent protection measures? Has China find the right mix?
Yes, I think so. For many people, they think it's a dilemma. If you have totally locked down, your economy will clash. But in China, it's quite on the opposite. We had the strictest lockdown and for 2 or 3 months at the beginning of the pandemic. And later, our economy grew very fast. And also, the most important thing is we cherish life. We think life is the most important thing. For people, even for in some Western countries now, even they abandon the policy of lockdown, but very few people just go out, right? They still have this kind of fear, this kind of worry that they might be affected. So I think that the policy of this kind of lockdown to some extent is proved to be effective right now. If we look at the economic data last year, China is the only country that achieved positive growth. So that means, that must relate it to this kind of, I think the experiences should be learned by Western countries.
All right, guys, we will take a short break. Stay with us on Dialogue. Flora, what do you think as a younger generation of Chinese? What are they thinking about the COVID prevention and control measures in China?
At first, we were super frustrated because we were stranded in our home. We were not allowed to socialize with our friends. But gradually, I just think people are not so sensitive about this issue anymore. And since Delta has hit, we have been strictly following the public health protocol. For example, in our office, we don't encourage students to come to the office. Instead, we encourage them to stay online, to stay connected with us, just to protect them. For another incident, since Delta has hit, my colleagues have been lining up at night in residential areas to get tested, just to make sure that everything is safe, everyone is good. And after this, I have also seen a lot more students who want to choose public health as their major in college. So I think those are I would say the silver lining of COVID-19. People have become more aware of public health, and people are learning how to obey rules and how to respect other people's rights.
All right, guys, we're not going to shy away from problems. This white paper also says there's no such thing as perfection in a country's human rights conditions. So let me start with you, Michael. What are the changes you wish to see in China going forward regarding its human rights conditions?
Well, after all, no matter where China goes, China builds rather than disrupt. So from my expectation, I really hope when COVID-19 is over, we can go and visit the rest of the world. And wherever I go, I hope I can pay them with RMB and they can accept Chinese yuan, along with the most current digital payment, which is very convenient, I believe, for the people around the world.
Okay, Fred, take it over. What do you think?
Chinese interpretation is very different from a Western interpretation. And so it depends on where do you look at it. You're looking at human rights only from the way of having enough to eat, enough place to live, and the economic condition improve. That's a tremendous improvement in human rights. And in that regard, actually, Chinese Revolution is a huge improvement because Chinese society, an old society, a landlord system, people with tenants, and I mean, then you have extreme poverty. I mean, so when you have land to the tiller program, that is the most astonishing human rights improvement there can be. But then if you terms about the political rights and the other stuff, it become more sensitive because, well, I mean, it is a really a dilemma. I see it today around the world. For example, on the internet, do you let people spread rumors or you don't? Who's the judge? Who's the judge? And my take is that we have to learn to deal with different kind of opinions the same way we deal with the virus. Only way to have a what do you call it, the antibody against the virus is to be exposed to virus. And you can't expect people to live in the claimed place. So by having exposed to different ideas, different opinions, having arguments, and inoculate people with saying, okay, well, there's a different opinion, but look at that, okay? Educating people rather than just censoring it, I think that's a better approach.
Points taken. Professor Zhang, what do you think?
I think we Chinese people work too hard. Probably if we can enjoy more leisure life, and for us, you know, some people work extremely for long hours. And even during the holidays and weekend, we still need to think about our work because the job market is very competitive. And usually, I usually think human rights should be in a more pragmatic way. You know, freedom of speech, just as Fred mentioned, I'm not a fan for that, especially during this period of time. Misinformation is everywhere. It's not good for teenagers, for young people. You know, they don't have the capacity to identify what is right, what is wrong. So for me, I think, you know, yeah, we need to enjoy more life, to live a healthy life, and also, you know, to improve our working environment, have a more harmonious relationship with colleagues, to live a better environment. All these are what we need to do, what we need to improve in the future.
Yeah, work hard, play hard. Flora, what do you think?
I would like to see two changes happening in Chinese society. One is that I would like to see more philanthropy spirit in society, because for my dad's generation, their job is to provide for the family, right? But for our generation, since we are relatively better off, our job could be to serve the community, to pay it forward to the society. And number two is I would like to see continued promotion of education equality. I would like to see a student's choice would not be between, you know, dropping out to make money or staying in high school. I would like to see their choice has become whether choose to have an education in Beijing, in Guizhou, or in New York or London.
Michael, do you have anything to add? We have 1 minute left.
Yeah, I do. So currently, we take an example of fixed income market. The total foreign holdings for the RMB fixed income for RMB bond stays at 3.5%. But if you take a look at Germany or France, they are more than 60% of foreign investors for their government bonds or credit bonds, right? If we took a look at the United States, they're also 29%. And even Japan is 8%. So we are only at 3.5%, which means the globalization of RMB will be continue to happen. And this is the promised future.
Yeah, hopefully that will be the case. Michael, Flora, Professor Zhang, and Fred, thank you all so very much. Come back again.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching Dialogue. That will do it for this edition. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing.